What's going on, guys?
Hey there.
Yeah, we got a full house. I'm liking this. What's up, guys? What's up, Hafka? What's up, Danny? How are you guys?
Doing great.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm doing great. Let's fucking go.
Hey, dude, I don't know. Maybe it's because again the regional thing. Hafka, your energy is contagious, man. So you get me excited. And we only had a chance to talk for a few minutes before we came on, so I'm excited to learn a lot more.
Thank you. I'm just an on-chain monkey.
Amen. How did you and Danny meet? I mean, I know that you guys kind of, roll together quite a bit, but I don't know how that story started.
Well, Danny reached out to me because I was doing ordinals, and we just connected immediately, came over to the studio. We started talking about Bitcoin and ordinals and reinscribing. He gave me a lot of information. Danny's very deep in the technology. I'm not. And so I immediately recognized Danny, not just as an on-chain monkey, not just as a great person, but a terrific resource in the technology. And that's really where it's at. It's just, we're connected now.
And you have one of these.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I don't have a hat, though. Get a hat, I'm going to get a hat,
I got one of these too. I love it, Dan. I still have my one to send Sean, which I haven't done yet, so I apologize.
Yeah, but those clink great. They've got metal in them. Those are rock solid.
Yeah, they are.
Currency of art. Those are the real fiat.
Amen. And Danny, thanks for coming on. And I feel like Danny gets a lot of people, if not into the space, at least over to Bitcoin. I still can't tell if Danny likes me or not. So maybe by the end of this show, I'll be able to break him loose. Maybe he can give me one of these or something like that, so I know for sure if he likes me. But excited to have you guys on. Hafka, we were talking about before we got on kind of your story a bit, and I am interested how you got from traditional mediums of art maybe over into the space you are now, how that kind of happened, if you could break it down.
Sure. Well, I think of it as a really natural process, and I think this is relevant to art on Bitcoin because I don't think it's as foreign or as weird as an idea as a lot of people seem to think. And I'm really contrarian. I really am into being following an unconventional path. But, I just see myself as an artist and, working in traditional media. And then, in the 90s, I started, because I have children and I was introducing them to computers, I started doing digital art. Digital art absolutely fascinated me. It's just another medium. There is no big divide between, let's say, oil painting like the one behind me and digital art. The tools are even better nowadays. But, that just, became a mind-blowing thing. And then in 2022, I realized that there was actually a digital art community. And that's how I got here. But just to preface that, I did try to promote digital art in the art world, in the trad art world, when I was doing digital art. I even published a book of my digital art. And what I found is that because there was no way to authenticate it or limit it like we do with it, for example, in a traditional medium like etching, and I'll get to that later because I put that on the blockchain. But then, no one in the trad art world was interested in digital art. And what blew me away in 2022 is the realization about the blockchain, particularly, that art could be authenticated. In fact, that art could be placed on the blockchain in such a way that it is immutably undeniable. And that's where I am right now.
Dude, I love that, and also we had some interesting guys on last week, and when you're talking about the medium, I think when I originally heard kind of the art on Bitcoin and the on-chain monkey community, et cetera, when it comes to traditional artists creating art that's on chain, I think the knee-jerk reaction is picturing tokenized art, right? Taking an art piece and simply making it tokenized. And recently I've seen more people using blockchain as a medium, which sort of opens up, whether that's experiential or interaction or immersion, which is really interesting to me. I never looked at it that way. Is that sort of how you look at it, or how do you view that?
Well, my feeling is that, and this goes back to talking about the art world. I don't see the split, the trad art world, the on-chain art world, Web3. I don't even see the split between PFPs and an oil painting. I think one of the really, truly great things about art is that it allows for any sort of expression. And in fact, a lot of things that people think of as less than a painting, for example, a PFP, well, that, inputs into art too. In Web3, GIFs, let's take Xcopy, for example, because that's the prime founder art, let's say, in Web3, deservedly so. GIFs are not possible on a canvas. So all these things become possible with the technology. I don't see so many distinctions. I think artists need, more than anything else, complete freedom. And they grab from all sorts of sources. That's why I really love the on-chain monkey. That's why my PFP is not my version of an on-chain monkey, but it is an on-chain monkey. It's all valid as far as I'm concerned, and it's all exciting, and we're very early, and this is just the beginning. That's why, the thing that I say the most is really, let's fucking go. Art is about progressing into the future.
Totally. Yeah. And I think what's interesting is that, and a lot of people do kind of have that dichotomy between PFPs and art on Bitcoin, but really, I think it's a really unique opportunity for artists like yourselves or anybody else to be able to establish a community. I feel like digitally, that is one advantage, is that you're able to congregate and build up your community and show that cohesion, where in traditional art, someone having it in their house, there isn't the same visibility, let's say. So I think it's an interesting element.
Well, one of the great distinctions, so, in the traditional art world, everything is mediated really through middlemen, whether it's galleries, whether it's museums, whether it's curators, whether it's, unaffiliated curators. There's always gatekeepers. Now, it's true, there are gatekeepers of a sort in Web3. It's a natural, human phenomenon to want an authority figure to inaugurate your entry into any art world and say, well, this is worth it and that's not worth it. But this community has the possibility of much more freedom. So take the on-chain monkey thing for as an example. This is a community. We all reinforce ourselves. We all identify with this image, even this little coin. It's cool. So I think it's a bigger art world. There's more freedom. It is actually the world. That's what the internet provides us. And what the blockchain really provides us with is the actual certainty that's worth more than a gatekeeper's certainty. When I put something, when I or any other artist inscribe something on the Bitcoin blockchain, when you put it really truly on chain, and it isn't just something on a server somewhere that points to something that's on chain, then you're really kind of, first of all, you're making a statement about the work itself. You want it to be permanent. That's what art's all about, actually trying to transcend time. It's a grasp, it's a reach for immortality. This is the commonality of all artists, and the blockchain, provides it. It's really quite extraordinary.
No, totally. And it is different. I'm following you 100%, because you're saying in the traditional art world, there's that gatekeeper of, I don't know what the title is, publicist, whatever it is that gets your art in front of other people, or even to get it displayed, right? There's a hurdle. I think in Web3, there's still a marketing hurdle, right? Because you still have people that connect to many others, let's say, but it's still blurred.
So. No, I disagree with that. There are hurdles wherever you make them up in your own mind. And I want to address this to a lot of young artists. You could say, well, the big whale in this community doesn't promote me, and this community doesn't promote me, and that community doesn't promote me. Big deal. This is the first time in the entire history of mankind that the doors are wide open. So you have to figure out the way to communicate your value to the mass out there, to the masses out there. Now, of course, that's difficult, but art is difficult. You're believing in something truly unique. So I think it's always worth the effort. I think crying about the fact that this person or that person, that gatekeeper doesn't support you or doesn't advocate for you is just a way to just feel like a victim. Let's not feel like a victim. The opportunity and the technology here and it is phenomenal. And just remember, when you mint something to the Bitcoin blockchain, it's forever. So make it your best shot. Continually make it your best shot. It goes forever. So you've got a lot of time to communicate it. You don't have to communicate it in 5 minutes and expect results.
I agree with Hafter there, because the opportunity only gets bigger and easier for that solo
Absolutely.
artist, right? That nobody's promoting. Because as more people learn about the space, they're going to want a piece that, you know, makes them feel a certain way, that they can show it. They're not necessarily going to be, all of them aren't going to want just kind of what everybody else has. You know, they can get the sense of being in the community and have the piece that they really enjoy.
This is really the very beginning. And, you know, the thing about conformity, and there is, you know, this tendency towards conformity where everybody wants the most popular thing. And, you know, all I can say about that is that expresses a lot of insecurity in, you know, we're all insecure. Insecurity is a fact of life, but the technology provides for really phenomenal individuality. And I know it's difficult to put something out there and say, this is art. You know, when you put it out there and you say, this is art, and if it's really, truly unique or really difficult, well, you're not going to get a lot of people agreeing with you, but it's perfectly valid. And as time goes on, there will be hopefully more individuality and less conformity because the actual technology allows for that. This is the first time in history. You know, if you really think about a historical view of art, if you were just, without mass communication, if you were just in a village, the village painter would be the only artist. The village musician would be the band. You know, we could see that in modern music. You know, Stravinsky or the Rolling Stones or the Beatles are global. They went everywhere. It wasn't just about listening to like one group in a pub. This is the revolution that the internet provides. The revolution that the blockchain provides is authenticity about this.
I think that On-Chain Monkeys, even though they're a collection, I think they're doing the same thing as pressing the boundaries and limits of what you can do with digital art, like on this last Katoshi, where you can zoom in and, you know, see it very detailed. And so, but yeah, I think it works with
Absolutely.
both and all artists in general.
Sorry.
But just one thing about On-Chain Monkey, even me reinscribing my monkey and another monkey, I reinscribed with my imagery of monkeys. You know, that is a freedom. Whoever could have that freedom to reinscribe a version on a work of art that's your own, but does not destroy the work of art. This is phenomenal. This is, you know, Danny explained this to me. You know, reinscription is incredibly powerful. I would like to see a lot of other artists and a lot of people personalizing their On-Chain Monkey. You know, this is really something incredibly valid and incredibly powerful.
I first of all, I didn't know you were an artist. You're it's like a motivational speaker. My mind's spinning. You're making me feel good. So I love the energy, man. And one thing you said, I just want your take on this, and I do have a question for Danny too that kind of loops this in a bit. But I was thinking the other day, right? I think an argument could be made, whether it's right or not, that I guess one of the differences between trad art and digital art, that it's easier to display physically your traditional art, right? I know that there's other ways around that, but overall, I think that while it could be a limitation, it also kind of sets up an interesting paradigm where, since especially I'm sure in your world, Hafka, a lot of people buy it simply to display it. It makes it less personal, right? It becomes like a flex or showing what you have. When it's digital, it's almost more intimate. And I look at like even portraits that just came out, right? It's not as easy to experience that on a wall as it is when you're looking at the art yourself. You're able to interact with it. And it's not so important what everybody else thinks about it because you're not displaying it, because you enjoy it directly. And I think that's a really, really interesting kind of component of digital art, where it's not about putting on your wall and showing people and they knowing how expensive it is, whatever. You're actually experiencing it one-on-one in a completely different way.
I think that's true. There's a lot of disadvantages to traditional art. There's a lot of disadvantages to big canvases. They can only be owned by one person. Because of all of the things that are involved in physical art, it becomes very expensive. Shipping this painting behind me to Europe is, it has to be crated. It's a major cost, even to Arizona from where I am in Brooklyn. All these things are issues. And they're also, the fact of the matter is that physical art has the limitation of being owned only by one person. So it becomes a very class associated thing. Now let's take a digital impression of this painting. Let's say I make an original on the Bitcoin blockchain, and then I make prints that point to the original on the blockchain. Well, now a lot of people can afford it, and a lot of people can afford it in such a way that it becomes really intimately their own. This is really, a huge advantage of digital art. That's why I was very attracted to it. And, while I do both physical and digital art, that's just because, I have a lot of energy and a lot of, frankly, a lust for a lot of mediums. I enjoy doing lots and lots of different things. Listen, I'd fly a plane if I had the time. So I think that, I like all mediums, but I really feel digital art is here to stay. It's phenomenally powerful. And as you're pointing out, it's very, very intimate. And it's, that's a phenomenal plus for it.
Yeah, random question. Are you able, that pointing to it is interesting. If that were the case, right? Let's take the art behind you right now. Could somebody own that parent as like the original, and then the copies then become the ones that point to it? Is it that simple, or is that?
It is that simple. Well, I've been doing that with Bitcoin. So there are prints and there are originals. And I just inscribed something that I think is quite revolutionary. A group of works that I made in 1981 that are in the Museum of Modern Art displayed. They're also in the British Museum, and that's because I made them as etchings. They're traditional copperplate etchings that I engraved and then I printed. Now I put them on the Bitcoin blockchain. So these works all go together, and what I'm hoping for is one person buys them all, and at the same time, I make prints of them all so that many people can have it. So it becomes something that one person can keep together, and at the same time, it becomes owned by many, many people in this community. Now, this is something truly revolutionary. If you think of this specific work, for example, it's called Incisions. Now, who owns it? It's in the Museum of Modern Art, and it's in the British Museum, but no one gets to see it unless they go to those museums. Bitcoin has revolutionized this. Inscribing it, they are original. They're undoubtedly, the originals, period. And now many people can own them.
No, absolutely. And curious too, I mean, kind of staying with that a minute is, in talking about it as a medium, right? And I think, again, I use portraits as an example. I thought it was very, very interesting. Is that medium seems like it develops over time, right? There's going to be creative thinkers that kind of expand what's possible. And I guess as a question for Danny, is what's possible something that can expand as well, right? Do you see what can be, what art on Bitcoin is possible now being different than, let's say, a couple of years from now? Is that able to be developed?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're just kind of scratching the surface of what we could do with this new medium. So, we basically in the last 2 years figured out, recursion is very powerful. That was kind of the first thing people played with. And now reinscription is the latest thing. And also this idea of linking something to another, the pointing, right? Parent-child provenance is one way of pointing. Actually, recursion is another way of pointing. These are two different ways of pointing, but they're all done on-chain. And these pointers are immutable and also very permanent for everyone to see. So the idea of creating the prints, right? The prints are really a collection. You're creating a collection using basically parent-child provenance, which is by the whoever controls or owns or the artist himself. In this case, Hafka's artist himself, who says, this is my original work. I'm going to make 50 prints of this, right? And that's a collection, right? And people can own that. So that's another kind of new concept with digital works. So these are all kind of experimenting with this medium of what actually is this thing. Like some things you can think of maybe the physical, maybe equivalent perhaps, but some things are just new and it's really a purely digital thing. And digital ownership itself is a very new concept that you can actually own a digital thing. And what does that mean, right? Because we've had digital bank accounts for decades, right? Like you go to a bank account, since there were computers, people had tracked their how much, let's say, cash they had by a computer. But that's a different type of digital ownership. That's like the banks controls how much you own. But here, when we talk about digital ownership, I'm talking about this decentralized digital ownership, which is kind of I guess you just think of it as, well, like if you pick up a rock outside, right? That rock is yours basically because it's in your hand, right? You kind of intuitively know it's yours, right? Like same with the poker chip, right? Like it's in your hand, it's yours, right? Because I gave it to Hafka, it's his, right? He knows it's his. But when someone emails you a JPEG, I mean, you don't really have that feeling yet, right? This was 20 years ago. But today, when someone sends you a Bitcoin Ordinal, right, it actually is like saying the physical poker chip, right? That idea, but that is still very new to most of the world, right? And the artists too, who are kind of experimenting with this medium. And so I think then it's like, well, what can you do with art that you're creating where there's digital ownership involved, right? So what does it mean to own the print versus owning the original digital version? And then because it's on chain on Bitcoin, what kind of is it visual art? I mean, it doesn't have to be visual art. We're talking about visual art. It could be audio. It could be other things. But even if it's visual art, how do you create the visual art? A lot of it is actually done by code with this generative art approaches. And how you can generate that art is going to be like there's so many ways that's unexplored, and how you can generate visual art or other types of art. And so that'll be all pretty new for any artist working on Bitcoin. And I think with Hafka, he was talking about we're exploring how AI, like generative AI, could be created to generate art.
That's great. Yeah. Well, the piece of mind that Danny bought is a great example, and that really just blew my mind. Danny reinscribed several details of that piece and a larger resolution with larger resolution. Now, the concept that Danny is scratching just the surface of, because I think the technology will get much more, much deeper and much more viable, is the idea of recreating this piece at larger resolution. So the piece that's inscribed on the Bitcoin blockchain is actually the authentic key that allows it to be made into a bigger resolution that could be on someone's screen. But the thing that really interests me is that technology, of course, always has limitations, but digital technology, we have not discovered the limitations of yet. There's much more to explore, specifically because it happens through code. If you compare that to like the technology of oil paint, which happens through pigment and linseed oil or safflower oil, okay, we've explored it all. We really basically know the limits of that technology. So while it's phenomenal and it's very good for what it does, we're here at the very beginning of something really, truly revolutionary that intertwines with old artistic technologies. So the road ahead in the future is truly exciting for a lot of artists. You know, it's only limited by what you can do. You know, my inability to really understand coding and use coding is the only reason I'm not doing generative art. That may change in the future. I don't know what my capacity is for that, but certainly a young artist starting today is going to see code as a valid tool in the same way that when I was 20 years old, I saw oil paint.
No, I love it, and I think you'd brought up too, and I'm only bringing this up because of where you're located. Maybe you're not aware, maybe you know it firsthand, but the authenticity piece is. Are you familiar with? I think it's. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it correctly. The Nadler Gallery.
I've heard of it actually. I don't.
It's in Manhattan.
Yeah,
and
is that correct?
I think so. Yeah. I think so. And it was, they had a film come out about it on Netflix. It was called Made You Look. And it was this story. It was the Hammer family. So Armie Hammer, the actor, his family have this art house, and they had a lot of Pollocks and Rothkos and all these other historic art. And anyway, long story short is they were selling these pieces for millions of dollars. It was crazy, right? They had very, very rare, I think they even had Picassos, all this wild stuff. And turns out that a whole lot of them were forgeries, a whole lot of them that went for a tremendous amount of money. Right. And when you peek under the hood, it was interesting. And maybe this is something that's common in your world, but a lot of the people that own them weren't crying foul because they're stuck. They got the forgery. They almost want to sit on it so no one else knows it's a forgery. Maybe they can offload it later on. And, you know, that whole provenance authenticity angle is wild, right? And I actually I know Armie, and I know him through an artist coincidentally. But the whole story got crazy. And I think just that authenticity piece is valuable. Like you said, everything else aside, just the simple authenticity.
The oldest gallery in the trad art world, Nadler Gallery, really closed down in a huge scandal because
That's it. I said Nadler.
Okay, not
Nadler. I literally looked up how do I pronounce this, and it said Nay.
Yeah, Nadler Gallery. It's Know.
Yes, yeah. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah,
they had a guy in Queens in a garage painting Jackson Pollock's paintings.
Yeah, yes.
You know, it's not so hard to forge paintings. You know, a lot of, you know, the problem with all this is how do we authenticate art? You know, I remember when Jean-Michel Basquiat died, there was a dumpster in front of they were throwing all his crap out. Unbelievably, there was a dumpster in front of the building that he rented actually from Andy Warhol. And people were going in the dumpster to search for bits and scraps of things that Jean-Michel drew on. And, you know, those things wound up on the market. You know, there's a tremendous amount of forgery in the art world. There's a great movie about that, actually. F is for Fake by Orson Welles. It questions all things about culture. It's one of the truly great movies of all time. You know, so, you know, one of the things that we really can keep in mind is that if artists authenticate stuff by putting it on the blockchain, it is truly authenticated. Now, one of the problems in our community has been that artists are very reluctant to mint a piece because it goes unsold. Now, this is actually kind of, you know, part of the
actors, his family have this.
This is part of one of the problems in the art world is the idea of scarcity of art. You know, while an artist is alive, there's really no such thing as scarcity if you're working. And I don't think it makes sense. I work every day, all day long, so I make a lot of art. There's no point in me faking scarcity. And I think the less people fake scarcity, the more people mint on the blockchain, the better off, the healthier the art economy will become in the future.
Wait, I think that's really interesting. So you're saying on the scarcity side that it just shouldn't be. So if you have a piece,
most often faked. I mean, just think about Pablo Picasso. How many works did Pablo Picasso make? It's an amazing amount. I mean, the guy just didn't sleep. He was creative 24/7. He loved creating. There are thousands and thousands of Picasso drawings. This idea of faking scarcity with market pressure has always been an obstacle. And I just think it's just fake. It's nonsense. Put art out there, mint it. Let's have a real accurate view of artists' complete process. It's quite interesting, actually, the way art evolves. There's more to art than most art consumers understand. I think one of the beauties of art is that really it's a very deep personal exploration of things unknown without security. There's no such thing as everything's perfect. It's all a conglomeration of mistakes and instincts that add up to an expression of what our culture truly is. I'm all in favor of art being a little more naked and less manipulated than it traditionally has been. And the blockchain in Web3 allows for that to happen in a very natural way.
well, Matt, can I just ask one thing? Because I don't want him to leave this topic. I'm really sorry. So, I'm just trying to be clear on this. I think it's really fascinating. So, Hafker, are you saying that? Okay, again, I'm using the art behind you because I'm staring at it. Right? Are you saying to mint that and have an endless amount of them? Right?
I don't know about endless amount because that gets a little impractical, like having total open editions. Although I did a beautiful work of art, Ape In, with an open edition so that many people could get it, and the piece became legendary. And it's a lot of fun. What I'm advocating for is actually a lot of liveness. What I'm thinking, art keeps me alive. Art is really fun. It's exciting. I joke around a lot of times because it really is kind of deeply pleasurable fun. And faking scarcity is no fun. Faking seriousness is no fun. Let's all have fun with how deep we really are. It doesn't mean we can't be serious, and it doesn't mean that art's a real adventure. And so what I like about it is inviting people into the adventure with me. I want somebody who's experiencing this painting. I don't want just one person in Beverly Hills to have it hidden away. I don't even think having it in a museum. Most things that are in museums are in the basement. We're living where technology makes it possible for us all to enjoy art. This is a lot of fun, whether it's a PFP or whether it's this individual painting. The technology is now making it possible for many people to see it in their own way, see it in the context of their lives or my life or, the community's life. Really, for me, it's all, let's fucking go, as I say.
So is that what your new collection is about? Is it about the etchings that are in the museums now? You can get it
absolutely. I mean, in 1981, when I made them, I made them by myself in a studio all alone. When they went up into the Museum of Modern Art, they showed them one time, and actually, I was very young and I was very naive. I didn't even think that was a big deal. I didn't even go to the show until the last day of the show. I was just like flat out stupid, the fact that it's in museums Well, yes, that's impressive to a lot of people, but museums are kind of dead. What's alive is actually this community, whether it's on X or whether it'll be filtered through some sort of other technological connecting medium. And we're all experimenting with that. We're experimenting with platforms. We're experimenting with social media. This is just the beginning. There could be kind of forms of art social media that connects all of us and allows us to actually understand art in a new and formative way. After all, art used to be only understood in the context of experiencing it in a place of worship. Like, think about that. We see Michelangelo in a church, now, or, great paintings like Velasquez was in a palace. The palace is our phone now. The church is our phone. So what I'm saying is that let's truly expand this revolution. Let's really go with art on chain. And this is truly revolutionary. It's not just another gallery. It's actually way more than that. That's why I took pieces, and no other artist, I came in a little late into this ecosystem. I came in 2022, but the great thing that I saw my asset is that I already have works that are very established. They're in museums. They're in major museums. I don't have to prove myself, but I can also put them on the blockchain. So I see this as a revolutionary moment. And I think the future of art on Bitcoin is phenomenal.
Okay, so I totally agree with you with the scarcity aspect. And the reason why, I used to really believe in the scarcity. There's only so many of these. I better grab one. But we were talking on the other show to Cybersea and the Enigma project. And so my dad saw that, and he sent me a text, and he's like, this art is super awesome. I want one, and I want to put it on my wall. I want to put it on a TV on my wall, and I want to have it running. And so because to him, he doesn't have to go through trying to explain what the blockchain is, what Bitcoin is, how the blocks or the nodes come to consensus, and whatever produce a block, and what the block times are, and the congestion and everything. But he could have it on the wall, and somebody comes over to the house, and he said, just look at it. This is showing a representation of the network as it runs now. And so to him, it's kind of like it's a kind of a show off piece, and it's personal to him because he's involved. And but he does not care how many Cybersea puts out, and he could care less. He feels about part of the community. He'll pay just as much for it, and if he made as many of those as he possibly could, and even though he wouldn't mint out or whatever, doesn't matter. He could just keep it going. But that puts there's an unlimited potential of how big the community
absolutely
is.
Well, he made a choice. The work, he relates to the work. That's what's really important. The technology in and of itself is not actually important. And we don't really need to harp on technology. Think about technology as a refrigerator. A refrigerator is a technologically advanced machine. We do not really need to know how to make a refrigerator, how it works. We just use a refrigerator. We use PCs. Art is not about explaining coding, explaining how a computer works. I never explained to anybody how oil paint works. Oil paint does not work with evaporation. It's polymerization, but who cares? The technology is irrelevant. What's relevant is the emotional reaction to art. Art has to have meaning. The more we focus on meaning, the more rewarding art is. Art without meaning has no value. It doesn't matter if it's been pumped up to have a high value in money. Eventually, that's just another weird phenomenon. The real true meaning of art is its meaningfulness to us personally.
Okay, and to double down on that, so I own a Genesis monkey, right? And so he also wants an on-chain
Got to get him
monkey.
one.
Okay,
Got to get him an on-chain
And so,
monkey.
but the point still remains where he doesn't care how many there are. He doesn't care that the floor price is rising. Him seeing that that they're costing more and more is just him realizing that more and more people are either wanting to be a part of the community and or loving the art itself. And so he loves the way it looks. He wants one. It's kind of like an iconic it's an iconic piece
I
of art. I
recognize that right away with Danny, and I think, a lot of kudos goes to you, Danny, for creating this. The on-chain monkey is not just the visual representation, it's actually the community, the whole concept. It all feels great. And actually, the moment you're involved, the moment, when I switched my PFP to the on-chain, the entire community welcomed me. That felt really good. Being part of the community is really kind of a super cool thing. And, there's no replacing that. That in and of itself is the meaningfulness that I'm talking about. So meaning does not only happen in an expressionistic way. Like, let's say, I posted let's take this painting. This painting behind me is dependent on a certain kind of expression of emotions. On-chain monkey expresses a community coherence. That is meaningful. It's phenomenally meaningful.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think Web3 or this ordinal space, since you actually own the art itself, you actually own it, right? It can't be just that a server can't go down and then it be
absolutely
lost or changed or anything. It's actually inscribed on Satoshi's.
You can't change the metadata. It's
yeah. So it's almost as if we don't even know what this. We know partly what this experience is and this ecosystem is, but we don't quite know what it can be because it's obviously going to be so much more. But I think
that's for history to tell, and we can use an analogy in traditional painting. Paintings are painted with non-fugitive pigments, and the reason for that is fugitive pigments fade. Now, if Michelangelo painted the Sistine Chapel with fugitive pigments, we wouldn't know it. So art is always dependent on lasting throughout history in an authentic way that expresses itself. That's true for sculpture. Marble sculpture, unless if it's bombed, of course gets destroyed, but it lasts. So, art on Bitcoin is really permanent. That's my question about art that isn't really truly on chain. Really depends on a server. It depends on consistency of the image. That's why I'm attracted to ordinals. It's phenomenal.
Absolutely, yeah.
That makes complete sense, and I don't want to. I think Matt, what you're talking. I don't get stuck on the scarcity topic, but I do think it's interesting because there's kind of two things at play there, right? Number one is I think you're right. A lot of people, the value is in the community, right? And is it a downside to that community expanding potentially exponentially? I think there's having some sort of friction or barrier to entry is necessary for it to hold value. It's hard when it's that constantly goes up. Let's say it just becomes more exclusionary when really it'd be great for the community. I agree with you. I think it's a tough one.
There is natural security. There is natural rarity. For example, let's take Incisions. Incisions was minted at one moment in time. It's the first time anyone with works in two major museums put them on the blockchain. That is scarce in and of itself. You don't have to fake scarcity. It doesn't matter how large the addition will be. It's still the first. It's still an amazing moment in terms of art on the blockchain. And even if I make 10,000, 20,000 copies of them, it's still the first, the one and only. This is really true scarcity. So scarcity happens anyway.
And I think that's the reason why, Bryn, I think you're talking about the community. If they have a cause or something that they stand for and rally around, that's really good for a community, right? And so I think that's why Rodrigo Napa just texted or commented Rise. On-Chain Monkey has come up with Rise. And Danny, could you tell us what that means and how that came about?
Absolutely. So our community, we have 4 core values that we all, stand behind. So RISE is the acronym: respect, integrity, sustainability, and enrichment. So, we kind of remind ourselves of these values, and it's a value helps, the community, stay together.
Right. Yeah. Totally agree.
No, I think that being at the core is super important, because that's value in and of itself, right? And question for both of you guys, and not to segue off the the art on Bitcoin topic whatsoever, but when you look at Bitcoin and that blockchain as a whole, right? It really, the things that have been built on it are stores of value, right? Whether it's Bitcoin itself. Art is a very obvious store of value, has been for a very long time, right? Do you think that, insert word on Bitcoin is something that will expand, right? Meaning, is it only Bitcoin itself and art, or do you think that Bitcoin becomes an ecosystem that acts as an economy, so to speak, where other things are built on it as well for some of the benefits that we're talking about? Or do you think it's specifically for, again, Bitcoin itself and art and communities, and that's it? Or do you see that expanding into different sectors?
Well, I think technology always expands. About Bitcoin, it's also very limiting in the sense there's only so many sats. So this is a moment when we can do something really epic, and it won't last forever. But technology and crypto art will expand. I'm taking advantage of this moment of Bitcoin. And, Bitcoin is the brand. It's really quite extraordinary. Well, whether this will happen in other forms of crypto, I don't know. I'm sure there are going to be advances in technology. We're never at the end. I would like to live thousands of years so I could just see the flow of all of this cosmically. But one thing I'm certain of, Bitcoin will.
Yeah, no, I agree. I guess a better way to say that is this, right? Hafke, you and I came into the space at around the same time. At that point, Ethereum had had a lot of attention. Not all, it didn't have more than Bitcoin, but it had a lot of attention, right? NFTs, smart contracts, et cetera.
Right.
And a lot of the narrative was, an NFT can act as a membership, or I'm going to put my mortgage or some sort of deed or title on Ethereum, right? And it made sense. I don't know, is that something that Bitcoin, is there a disconnect there where maybe that chain is better for it, or Bitcoin's more pure and you don't want all of that stuff on it? I'm interested too in Danny's take, because, is a lot of the functionality we talked about at one point on Ethereum, does that have a home on Bitcoin or not so much?
Yeah, I mean, the big distinction for art on Bitcoin is that it has to be on-chain, just by kind of the design of how we think about this. And also, actually, going back to the idea of scarcity, like one thing that is scarce for all of us is basically our time, right? We like Kafka said, he wished he could live 1,000 years, right? Like time is truly scarce, and Bitcoin also is the time chain, because it actually kind of marks time. Every around 10 minutes there's a block, and there's you kind of appreciate how scarce time is just by looking at Bitcoin too, because basically every block you can basically record up to 4 megabytes, but a block space is determined by kind of time too. So there's only so much time and so much block space that you can put something onto Bitcoin. So that actually is kind of built-in scarcity for doing anything on Bitcoin. I think digital assets will be kind of things that Bitcoin will be used for beyond just BTC. BTC is kind of the main digital asset for the Bitcoin blockchain. And now we have this new thing, putting art on there. I think there are other digital assets that people may want to put, it could be securities, it could be real world assets, it could be many things. Still all very, very new, that idea. And in terms of like what people, like we were talking earlier about experimentation with this medium. So I think kind of code-based art people find new ways to do it using basically that fits within the scarce block space. And we'll see a lot of more of those type of experiments. But yeah, it is kind of this like scarcity is a big part of Bitcoin. Right? I mean, the reason Bitcoin is valuable is because of the 21 million, right, total supply of BTC, and and we're here like spending our scarce time because we're interested in this this space and how it could be very meaningful for humanity, for culture, for art, for finance. So
I see us as also taking advantage in a positive way of this scarcity. I was super excited to put incisions on the Bitcoin blockchain because forever is a really powerful concept. And, you could just say the word forever and not really think about it, but it's beyond biblical. It's eternity. It is forever. So, that's a big thing. That's not true for any other art medium. They're not forever. We've seen, ancient sculptures blown up by terrorists. Certainly we thought huge sculptures that are bigger than people that are, stories high are permanent. Well, they're not. Dynamite ruins a lot of stuff. So I think the Bitcoin blockchain's foreverness is really incredibly powerful. I limit myself to thinking in terms of art because I am an artist, but it is incredibly powerful for me to say that Incisions is the first work of art that's in 2 major museums on the Bitcoin blockchain, and it'll outlive me and everybody else who is listening to this right now and who's on this show. That is incredibly powerful.
I mean, could you give us some more information on Incisions, right? Like for people that are listening, I know about it, but how can people tell us more?
After the show, I'll retweet, or perhaps Yanada's listening and she'll retweet for me links to the images. They're on Gamma right now. You could see them on the Blockchain Explorer. I will tweet them all. They're inscribed on the blockchain, and if you know how to go look, you can find them. So, but I will retweet them. I'm just not going to do it right now while we're talking.
Beautiful. I think I'm looking at. I'm going to wait for that retweet. I have your Gamma up now, which is awesome.
Yeah.
And
so
you're saying,
look, there's a collection called Incisions on Gamma, and you could see it. So,
here we are.
Okay.
All right.
Let's go. Yeah, there we go. That's cool. I love whenever that happens. I just love it. It's just incredible. All this art is absolutely, totally permanent. This is really, beyond museums. I mean, everybody's very, pro museums. There's Ape In, by the way. So
oh yeah,
where's Incisions? There's Ape In. We're all aping in here. I mean, Ape In is a concept that we can all. There's an on-chain monkey for you.
Amen. So here I am here now. Is there a way to click on Incisions? I don't want to get distracted by this.
There is.
Okay.
It's not on this page. Gamma's a little confusing sometimes because I believe this is the print page. I think Yanat will send you a link. She's in the other room. So she'll
tell him to search for Incisions on the top.
Search for Incisions on the top. Okay?
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to do it while we're on here because I want to check this out.
And it should come up. And if not,
there we are.
There it is. Okay, there's the page. That's the whole collection.
Oh, so cool.
So this is just mind-bogglingly cool to me because this is forever. When just think about it from my point of view. When I engraved these on an etching press in 1981, this was just not possible. it was just not possible. It's made on paper. It's insanely fugitive. A fire could destroy it, but now no fire could destroy it. And not only that, let's talk about the power of the on-chain monkey community. I did this after being introduced to on-chain monkey. All the on-chain monkeys know about this. That is also better than the Museum of Modern Art. It's kind of amazing how this works. It's really powerful and extraordinary. And I hope all artists going in the future see art on Bitcoin as viable.
Yeah, it's almost as though the artist becomes the museum in the same way that individuals became their own bank, right? So you're able to cut out a lot of that.
Yes, it truly empowers the artist. I am fugitive. This is forever. That is insanely powerful. That is, if you think of like the Freudian definition of what an artist wants, the artist wants immortality. It was never possible before. And art is always defined by its generation. Like, for example, in our generation, there are certain characteristics that we all recognize as being artistic. And then there are some things that we just look at and we say, well, this is crap. This isn't really art. Well, that stuff is permanent too. And that might be reevaluated in another time in history and another time in culture. Think about Van Gogh. Van Gogh was penniless when he died, and it's only because his sister-in-law had no other asset that she worked so hard to bring Van Gogh to the public. There might have been other artists like Van Gogh that are completely forgotten and lost. Art gets thrown in dumpsters all the time. So, the Bitcoin blockchain and true permanence is here. It is a revolutionary concept. It's really something else.
That in and of itself is fascinating to even think about, right? Because if Bitcoin existed then, you'd have so many people delving into that time period, trying to find similar art, and it would live just as it did on day one. That's interesting. I never thought of that. That's really, really interesting.
And there's more to that. Like, for example, I own, Van Gogh's letters. I have a book of all of Van Gogh's paintings. But, you have to really understand that books are compromises. They're JPEGs that go through the 4-color CMYK conversion, the process of printing on an offset printer. Truly, I have a museum catalog printed by a museum in CMYK. It's sort of garbage, but it's garbage we all settled on. Now, when, my image is uploaded to the Bitcoin blockchain, I'm the one that determines whether the colors are correct and how it's going to look forever. Forever is a powerful concept.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I never thought of that before. That's really, really, really interesting stuff. And in turn, just bringing to inscriptions one more time or incisions. I'm sorry. The wording's going to kill me when Danny's in here as well. When does that go on sale, or is that available now? I'm looking on here now.
It's available. I haven't really decided yet when the prints go on sale. I haven't really figured out the logistics of the mechanics. It was very, very important for me to just mint them and talk about them and put them out there. What I'm hoping for is, someone that wants to keep them together. I'm not really, I don't like the idea of selling each of the originals individually and separating them. I want the collection to remain together, even in ownership forever. So I'm exploring possibilities, and then I want prints to be widely owned in this community. So I just haven't figured it out. But even if it isn't yet on sale, it's there for everybody. And that's another thing that I think is really powerful. It's not just about buying and selling. Art is about experiencing in a deep way, in a meaningful way, and it happens over time. Art is contemplative. It's not just about looking at it once, glancing, understanding the idea. Art is actually deeper than that, and I'm hoping that people start seeing it like that. We're so used to no attention span, seeing things quickly, moving on. yes, some art works like that. A Campbell's soup can works like that. But there's a lot of different kinds of art. This is meant for more contemplation.
So this is kind of an example then of what we talked about earlier, where you want to keep this whole collection, want to keep it together, and then when you expand it to more people, it'll point to this collection. Is that right?
Absolutely, that's correct. Yeah, that's correct. But everybody will own originals in a sense, as Danny explained what prints are. Is that correct, Danny?
You mean the print relationship, parent-child?
The print relationship,
Depending on how you do it, right? So I think if you do a parent-child, it is a proper collection.
I did it a parent-child, yeah.
And do you do this yourself, in terms of that element of it? Do you? Because I feel like that's wild if you do. It doesn't even sound like it's possible.
Yacht helps me with everything technological. So while there is the possibility that I do it, I don't even trust myself to do it. Yacht does the minting. And honestly, when it comes to the way we did this, we consulted with Danny to make sure, and Brett over at Gamma to make sure we were doing it parent-child in the correct way. So I can't take credit for doing anything right, except the mistakes that I do in painting. It's the mistakes that are magic. Got it.
Oh, I was going to say that your bandwidth is only so much. That would be wild. So yeah, that makes complete sense, and I love it. And I think that ability to keep it together but allow others to participate is beautiful. It's really, especially if it's somebody who could never afford the whole, right?
That is really another revolutionary aspect of art on Bitcoin. I think it's just, that's phenomenal. That really, truly is phenomenal. And that's what's so exciting about this community, but that's also what's so exciting about being part of the community. You get to really own things that were, inaccessible on every level, and that's still true today in the art world. A George Boslet's painting, how accessible is that? It's only accessible to billionaires at this point. Picasso, same thing. It's kind of ridiculous. I mean, if you have to spend $170 million to have a Marilyn Monroe painting by Andy Warhol, well, who's going to get that?
No, totally. And just like culturally, I think it's perfect timing because a younger generation, I'm 40, so I'm in between, but that younger generation, I think that with what you're doing and the way that you're doing it, it's like almost a rebirth for a lot of the artists that really adopt into this, right? Because you can build a community in a way that probably would have never happened if it was strictly tangible art.
Absolutely. The limitations of the trad art world are, I know it really well. I've been doing it for 50 years. It's phenomenally limited. It's a tiny, tiny community. And, one of the ways I could express the revolution in this is years and years ago, I've sold a lot of paintings all over the world, but the process is really kind of incredible. I would finish a painting, then I would take a 4x5 or an 8x10 transparency of that painting because 35 millimeter slides are very, very small. So I used 4x5s or 8x10s. So I would take a 8x10 photograph of that painting. Then I would, in the middle of the night, drive over to the lab on 20th Street. I would wait a couple of hours. It would get processed. I would take it out. I would drive over to the post office. I'd put it in an envelope, and then I'd wait a week for it to arrive at a collector's house in Europe. Now, and then, the painting, they called me up and buy the painting. This was a very slow, cumbersome process. Now look at it right now. You can take a photo of a work of art with your phone and send it all over the world to millions of people at any given moment. The technology is truly revolutionary, and people who just admire the technology of the trad art world, they're just kidding themselves. It's a nonsensical thing it's looking backwards. The hell with it.
Completely. Hey, Sean, I know you had, I'm sorry. I think you have a question for Danny, Sean.
Well, I know we're about to wrap this up, but we'd love to have Danny and Amanda back before the Katoshis get released, and you could talk about that.
Yeah, that would be
I
great.
got my
Just
Katoshi.
that whole. Yeah, I've got a bunch of Katoshis. I'm interested in the 2,100 new ones and what's going to go on with that. So please, we'd love to
Awesome.
have you back, you and Amanda.
Yeah,
and
April
talk about
8th.
those. And Kafka, you're welcome anytime. Your energy is just amazing. We'd love to have you.
Thanks so
on
much
the
for
show
having me, and
anytime.
thank you
It's
to the whole community for participating with me in my work. It's really an honor for me, and I'm deeply grateful.
Amen. Yeah. Again, I appreciate you guys both. Hafke, you gave me a ton of energy, and honestly, I'm looking at things differently. I'm not saying that just because you're here, but some of the stuff that you talked about, I'll be chewing on for a few days. So I really appreciate it. Obviously, anytime you want to come back on, Danny, we'd love to have you and Amanda on before the Katoshi release. But appreciate you guys greatly. Matt, I don't know if there's anything you want to close out with. Otherwise, I can shut her down.
Nope, shut her down. I'm good. Great stream.
Beautiful. Thank you guys so much. Talk again real
Thanks so
soon.
much. Let's fucking
All right,
go.
see you guys. Let's fucking go.